Hello, friends. This is a bit of an emergency broadcast, and the reason why is that this whole week, no matter where I look or who I talk to, people have been freaking out about AI writing taking over. And I think I know why. It's because there was a New York Times article called "The New Fabio is Claude." This article is about a woman named Coral Hart who, over an 8-month period, she created 21 different pen names and published dozens of novels using AI chatbots. It says that last year she produced more than 200 romance novels in a range of subgenres. None were huge blockbusters, but collectively they sold around 50,000 copies, earning Ms. Hart 6 figures. And she also now sells courses on how to use AI to write a book in an hour. And she's also working on developing her own AI specifically for writing books. So everybody is freaking out about this, and I understand why. I am not without freakouts about this myself. But I did want to put a little perspective on the whole thing. The first thing that struck me about this article is that she published 200 books in a year, and she sold 50,000 copies. Well, let's do the math. 200 books, 50,000 divided by 200, 250 copies per book. Now, her books do appear to be in Kindle Unlimited, and I don't know if she included Kindle Unlimited borrowing figures in that total. Kindle Unlimited is a exclusive subscription program to Amazon where people borrow your book and you get paid by the page read. So you can kind of calculate, like, this is how many pages your book is, and then you can divide that by how many page reads you get, and you can say that's kind of like a sale. And some people kind of include that in their figure, and some people keep it separately. It also usually doesn't pay as well unless the book is rather long. My experience with Kindle Unlimited and romance is that about 70 to 80% of my sales were in Kindle Unlimited when I was in the program. If she really is only selling 250 books in total, that is really a very small number. But if you're making like $3 per book, okay, 250 copies per book at $3 a book, that's $750, and she's publishing one about every 2 days. So yes, that does add up to a 6-figure income. And of course, each person who bought or borrowed one of these books is taking a sale or a borrow away from someone who actually took the time to write a real book. So I'm not happy about it. Let me make that clear. I don't approve of the whole AI thing at all. And I feel like readers are getting duped. Readers clearly don't, in general, want AI writing, but not everyone is able to tell. However, I do think that the type of writing, she's a romance author, a tropey romance author. And I think that romance is somewhat of a unique genre in that it has always had an absolutely colossal amount of tropey and forgettable fiction that people just read, just kind of casually for fun. It is not to be remembered. Of course, there are wonderful authors of romance that people do remember and love and seek out their books, but there's also always been your Harlequin imprints where, you know, if you've ever been to a used bookstore that just has piles upon piles of identical books where none of them stand out, they all have a tropey title. Basically, she is in that market. So I don't see any path for this type of book to take over the publishing industry in general. If you're the type of person who was going to be picking up a Harlequin novel back in the day, you might now be the sort of person who might, whether wittingly or unwittingly, pick up one of her books now. But you can think about your own reading habits. When I think about the books I've read over the past 5 years or so, how many of them do I think an AI could replicate? And that I might pick it up and not realize that an AI had written it. I can think of a couple like rom-coms that I've read that had a very tropey premise, and the writing, you know, was very much kind of what you'd expect. So I can maybe name like one book a year that I read that I think is so tropey and predictable that I think an AI could conceivably have written it. I don't think that I would probably finish a book written by an AI because my experience with AI writing is that it's extremely bland. And indeed, I do put down a lot of books for being just too tropey and too bland. But there is absolutely no shame in sometimes wanting a book that's just predictable, tropey, fluffy. It's the kind of thing that I sometimes reach for when I'm really stressed out. Like I'm going to be waiting in a hospital or something. And I don't really, my brain's already kind of distracted and shut off, but I just want to be like entertained and not have to think too hard, not have to stress. I want to know what I'm getting. And some people have very stressful lives where they might want a lot of that kind of fiction. And I have no judgment against wanting tropey fiction. I think it serves an important purpose for our brains sometimes to have like predictable and comforting and just know like, okay, I'm going to get like the Hallmark movie, the rom-com with the heroine who works in publishing and her life is a mess and she meets a hot chef or, whatever. So what I see these AI writers doing, and I'm talking about the people who write an entire book using a chatbot. I think that they are going to have a very hard time branching out of tropey romance because that predictability is not entirely exclusive to romance, of course, but I would say romance definitely has the most of it. Like there's tropey fantasy, but fantasy has to have some level of world building. That's a lot more difficult for AI. Science fiction is often built around some kind of theme or idea that involves technology, and AI is not very good at themes. I think a mystery really has to hang together with like the clues, like a lot of pieces have to fall into place and make sense. There's a lot of things that AI struggles with, but one thing that AI can do is replicate something really basic, predictable writing, and romance does lend itself to that more than any other genre. Romances can be very simple, very predictable, very tropey, based mainly around feelings in the moment, attraction. And again, there's nothing wrong with writing or reading this kind of fiction, but I do think that it is extra susceptible to AI because of the nature of what it is. But I just don't ever see AI encroaching on like literary fiction or just more complicated books, at least not anytime soon. I mean, I don't want to predict what technology might do, in 20 years or something, but at least currently, there's a lot of things it's not very good at, like deep character work, themes, humorous dialogue, something that surprises you. So I think that AI writing of this caliber, of this magnitude, is mainly going to stay in romance. And if you write something else, I don't think you need to freak out about this. Now, there are still a couple of other things going on here that are somewhat of a concern. For one thing, there's authors that are going to use AI in a more limited fashion. And this is where I'm not sure. Like, I just have so many ethical qualms about AI right now because of the environmental toll, the whole stuff with like data centers and driving up all of our electric bills, the fact that it's not regulated, the fact that the people making it seem like they want to like destroy all human joy. The fact that it stole all of our novels to be able to do what it does, all of our art and all of our music. There's a lot of reasons that I'm not going to use AI, even if in some basic sense it could be a good tool. However, if you took away all those other things, I can see the temptation to use AI for certain types of scenes that AI is good at. Like, I personally sometimes struggled with writing the sex scenes when I was writing to market romance. The first 20 books, I was having a good time. And then the longer I was doing it, the more I was just like, I am so out of ideas. I have run out of ways for bodies to mingle with each other, and every word feels like I've used it 1,000 times. I had 2 different romance thesauruses on my shelf that I was starting to consult increasingly often, just oh my God, give me a different word. Give me a different word. required. So I can see the temptation in that case of just like writing all the story part, which is what I was enjoying, and letting the AI like spit out the like required sex scene. Action scenes can also sometimes be something I struggle with, so I could see getting an AI to write like the action scene and then me going in and filling out like the actual character banter during the action, the like parts that have more flavor to me. I can see the temptation of that. And I think some authors are going to be using AI as a tool to just kind of like get through certain parts that they don't feel that confident in. I have mixed feelings about this. Is that just another tool? If you're still writing 80-90% of the book yourself and you're letting AI write 10% of your book, is it a tool or is it a cheat? I'm not sure yet. I know that I'm very uncomfortable with it, even if I don't feel like I love all of my action scenes. I still can't see letting an AI write anything for me. But I do understand the temptation, and if you were to do that, I'm not sure how I feel about it. I do think as a reader, this might be invisible to us. So I don't know. I don't know what I think of that. The other thing here is some people do write tropey romance. And I would not like those people to lose their careers to a chatbot. And some of you are probably thinking, whatever, Lydia, I don't read tropey romance. I'm never going to read tropey romance. As long as this AI crap doesn't impede on the type of good books that I read, I don't care. But there's a lot of reasons for us all to want to protect the authors of tropey romance, whether or not we read it, whether or not we think it's good. Writing tropey books is often how a lot of authors get their start or make some money that allows them to grow as a writer and write other things later. Or in my case, the only reason that I'm writing my fantasy novels now is because I was able to bank money while I was writing tropey romance. So like I had a strategy with the whole thing. Write tropey romance as long as I could, as long as the money train was going, save the money, get myself more financially established, and then write the books that I really loved. There's no way that I could be doing any of this, the YouTube channel or writing my Hidden Lands books, if I had not spent 4 years in the romance trenches. And it also made me a better writer. Now, I wasn't writing like the most tropey romance, but still, like, there are plenty of authors who started out that way, like Catherine Applegate. I read her teen romances when I was a teen, and I really liked them, but they were kind of silly. And she has since moved on to writing more like literary books. But even if we take that out of the equation, I still want to protect the human element in all books, even the silliest romance that I can think of. I, as a reader, if I pick up a silly romance, I still want to know that there is some reality in there. So this whole AI thing is disturbing in the sense that you have to just vet books more carefully if you want to avoid it. And also some readers, there will be a percentage of readers that aren't going to care and are going to support authors who churn out books using a robot that have almost no human touch whatsoever. Creepy. But this whole situation, even in the tropey romance world, also kind of reminds me of when self-publishing was more new. You could write some pretty bad books. You could have a pretty bad cover. You could just slap them out there. And as long as there was like something about them that resonated with an audience, they would sell. When I first got into writing tropey romance, I did both fairy tales and I did reverse harem. And in both of those categories, you could write like, those were just like hot genres. I mean, they were like niche, but also they were hot within their niche. You could kind of just write like anything. It didn't have to be amazing. When I was doing research for like what was selling, a lot of the books I was reading, really sloppy and bad covers, just not good. These days, you can't get away with that kind of thing nearly as much. You need a certain level of polish to your cover and your blurb and your writing. And now, readers, we might not all think that all these books are good, but the quality as a whole has gone up. because there's just more out there and readers are a lot more discerning. They're not picking up just whatever like they were in the early days of like e-readers. People were kind of just discovering like new tropes or books that were super cheap or just, sexy books that they hadn't had access to before, whatever it was. There's kind of a boom where people were just voraciously reading all kinds of stuff that wasn't even that good and wasn't that professionally packaged. So the more you put out there, the more the bar has to lift. If this woman publishes 200 AI books a year and she teaches hundreds of other authors to put out 200 books a year, there's going to be so many books. The bar is going to keep raising and raising higher and higher. And I think that what will happen is we will see new ways for readers to decide what books they're going to read. Maybe you're going to really have to put more of a personal marketing touch on your books. Maybe you're going to have to prove that you're a real person. Maybe books are going to all kind of like the importance of reviews is going to increase. And Amazon gives you visibility based on your sales. So in the early days of Kindle, you could get away with like almost no visibility. You got a lot of organic visibility. Nowadays you get less organic visibility, but this woman is still, from what I can tell of the article, she's not doing a lot of like marketing. She's got many pen names. She's just churning them out very quickly. She's still mostly relying on organic visibility, it sounds like, and just writing in extremely tropey genres. The more books that are out there that are just sloppy like this, the more the bar is going to raise, and the more discerning readers are going to flock more and more to books that are like real and are good. Either they're not written with AI or an author has put more work into hiding the AI part, and you're going to need more marketing or more reviews. Then Amazon's going to lift the visibility of those books up higher, and the AI books are going to fall farther down the algorithm. That isn't to say that some of them aren't going to slip through. I'm sure they will. And of course, people are going to think of ways to market them. It's going to keep evolving and it's going to continue to be a problem. I do believe that, and that is the part that concerns me. But I don't think that it's going to just completely put like real authors out of business, even in tropey romance, because you're going to get a lot of reader pushback and people looking for like the real quality read. And that is going to help keep the best books elevated on the algorithmic ranks, so that you're going to have to dig a little more to find the AI slop. I can also see, personally, I can see Amazon putting more restraints on AI slop if they start to lose money. If people start to associate the indie marketplace with just crummy AI books and they start to just buy less books on Amazon because they think this is all bad, I can see Amazon putting certain restraints. Or if Amazon starts to lose people in Kindle Unlimited, for example, authors start to leave Kindle Unlimited because they'd rather publish more on Kobo, Barnes & Noble. Kobo has more quality control than Amazon, for example. So, over time, there tend to be certain market checks that can happen. I sound pretty optimistic about large companies doing something, and I don't want to sound overly optimistic about that, because generally I'm not, but we have seen some things like that happen in the past. Of course, there's also a problem with that. Like, for example, do they put more ways to try to tell through? They're going to use an AI to tell if you wrote a book with AI, and then certain people who didn't write books with AI are going to get their account banned automatically. We're going to see that kind of thing. That's certainly possible too. So there's a lot of concerns going on here. But the one thing I feel confident in is that most people who love to read are not going to want to read AI books. I still think this is mostly going to be confined to people who read a lot, but read kind of casually, just want a quick escape. And that is going to be mainly romance readers, and to a certain degree, some other rather tropey genres. But it's certainly not going to be all romance readers. It's certainly not going to be all readers in general. But then we have the other quote that really stuck out to me about this article. She says, if I can generate a book in a day and you need 6 months to write a book, who's going to win the race? And this entire mindset, like making money writing crap, I guess, could be a race. I don't think that very many authors think of it that way. Even when I was writing to market, I was not coming at it from that mindset. It was still necessary for me to enjoy what I was writing and to put some of myself into it. And that was the same for everyone that I knew writing to market romance. No matter how tropey or silly or, research to make sure that it hit all the right notes that readers want, the authors of this kind of tropey fiction still tend to gravitate toward things that they actually like reading and to add certain parts of themselves into the books, wherever you can sneak it in. Thinking of it like a race is so depressing, but at the same time, not entirely surprising. At least when it comes to tropey fiction, to some extent, I get it. When I was writing this kind of thing, I did not expect these books to really be like anybody's favorite book ever, to be like classics, even on like a cult following kind of level. I don't expect anyone to remember any of these books. And as I was writing them, I knew that was kind of the mindset I was going into. Like, I'm not trying to write my great work here. I'm trying to make some money so that I can write my great work later. In that sense, it does lend itself to a rather capitalistic mindset when it comes to the arts. The idea of being more productive and making more money is never far from your mind. And some people don't ever, like, my goal was just to make enough money to not do it, but some people's goal is to make enough money for the rest of their lives until they retire or die or whatever. For some people, they just like writing. It doesn't have to be any particular thing necessarily, and they want to make a lot of money doing it. She's clearly one of these people that the act of writing is not as important to her as making money, creating something, even if that creation is just putting prompts in a chatbot. To me, this would be just so utterly unsatisfying that even if I could make 6 figures doing it, I just like, oh no, thank you. Life is too short to spend even 1 year tinkering with AI chatbots to like generate books. But I am a storyteller and like somebody who really wants to bond with my characters. That's like the whole impetus for sitting down to write in the first place, is to like create a world and characters and have fun with it and get lost in it. And if I don't get any of that at all, then I don't want to do it. I'd rather just go have a day job. But not everyone is like that. Some people just enjoy like creating a thing, even if they didn't really create it themselves. In that case, it can become a race. And this is something that I have seen a rise of in mindset ever since indie publishing came along, is that there's a certain group of indie publishing, there's a certain mindset that is setting in certain Facebook groups, author groups, convention panels, whatever, because indie publishing does have so much earning potential and so many ways that you can like strategize your career to maximize your earnings and make it less about writing great work, the work of your heart and your passion, trying to always be the best writer you can. It really lends itself to taking control of the capitalistic marketing and tropey genre, like pulpy aspects of writing, and max them out and make as much money as possible. So in a lot of the indie groups, I've started to see this creep of treating writing like you win at it when you make the most money. I'm sure some of you are familiar with the 20 books to 50K group, which is titled with the implication that your goal is to make $50,000 a year. And they also have a ranking system that the people in the group will talk about, like different types of fish based on how much money you're making per year. So adopting this kind of language means, just by naturally, the tone of the group is going to be about, how do I maximize my writing to make the most money? Disheveled Editing Lydia here. I do want to make it clear, I'm not like hating on this group or anything. I'm a member of it. I've been in it a long time and I've gotten a lot of good advice from it. I do make my living as a writer, or at least now as a YouTuber and writer, but for many years I made my living solely as a writer. And you need advice to be able to do that. You need a place to share your experiences about how to make money. And that is a very different type of advice than like writing craft. So you need groups like that. I don't want to sound like boo to all the groups, of which there are quite a few, that are more based around maximizing your profits. Each individual group and each individual post aren't necessarily a problem, but the cultural shift around writing that results as a consequence can be a little depressing sometimes. And when there was no indie publishing, you really couldn't think this way because everything always had to go through a gatekeeper. Even if you were writing like sci-fi pulp and you were super prolific, you still had to go through various editors of magazines and publishing imprints to get your work published. You still had to deal with editors and rejections. If you got to the point where you were a really well-known author like Isaac Asimov, I'm sure you probably weren't getting as many rejections or editor feedback at that point. But nobody was just starting out in the position of Isaac Asimov. You had to the level of control that you had over your career was rather limited until you had proven yourself. And when I started in writing, there was no indie publishing yet. That was certainly the mindset I went into, that my career would be in the hands of the editors I was submitting to, and that I would never have complete control over my work, what was able to be accessed by the public, how I was able to market it. That was not in my hands. The only part that was in my hands was writing the best book I could and positioning it in the market in the best way that I could guess. It's not like indie publishing is now, where you can just sit down, you can study what's popular on Amazon, you can replicate it with just some tweaks, and it has a bit of your own author voice. You can put it out there the minute that it's done, get right to work on the next one. You know they will all be published. Your marketing is entirely in your hands. Because of this radical shift in publishing, this level of control that authors have over being able to write to market and to market to write, we're getting this tech bro mindset setting in a lot of corners of the indie publishing scape, where it no longer is really about writing the book that you love, writing a great book that will be remembered. It's about maxing the profits and the productivity and the marketability, and that's it. Just, can I make 50K? Can I make 100K? Can I make 500K in a year? And this article just feels like the ultimate manifestation of this mindset, where now not only are we've just removed the whole idea of writing the book to market from the equation. Now we're just generating the book to market. And that's where it just has reached the ultimate level of depressing, because writing to market can already be a little bit soul crushing for a passionate writer, but generating a book to market, now that is very depressing. However, the books that are really written to market are only a certain segment of the books that are published. I think that will continue to be true with AI writing, and even more so. So I'm not worried that it's going to take over writing entirely, or that I'm going to lose my audience for my Hidden Lands books, which are not going to be people that wanted really tropey stuff in the first place. So it's not all bad news, but yes, it is a little bit depressing. However, if you are the type of writer whose main goal is to really write the best book that you can, to express something, to share a character that feels so real to you, or to work with a deep theme that resonates with your whole soul, if your goal as a writer is to do something like that, I don't think that your audience is going to change tremendously, because I just think that's a very different type of book and a different type of reader. But if you are writing tropey romance, I support you, and I hope that all the readers will continue to support real authors as well, and try your best to avoid AI generated work stay abreast of what AI writing feels like, sounds like. Try to select books that you know that the author is a real human being. Let's try to keep art alive. So those are my thoughts on that. I hope this video isn't too incoherent because I didn't script it, I didn't plan it. I just sat down and started chatting after reading this article because it's kind of a quick moving news story and I just wanted to get it out there. If you're new here, my name is Lydia Foxglove. I am a fantasy author. And yes, I do also have a lot of written to market romances in my catalog that I don't think an AI could have ever written either. On this channel, I talk about the creative life in general and the writing life in particular. So if that sounds good to you, I hope you'll stick around. If you'd like more from me, I have a Patreon and a Substack that both have a free periodic little chatty newsletter sort of thing, as well as 2 free bonus videos per month voted on by you guys. Those are for paid members only. And I also have YouTube memberships where you can access those. And if you'd like to read any of my books, well, the Hidden Lands books are the ones I recommend, but I have many others. And my free book of the month is Captain Hook and the Mermaid, a steamy fairy tale retelling. I post every Sunday. Sometimes Wednesdays, sometimes random days of the week. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.